Welcome to Economics Happy Hour. My name's Matt.
And I'm Jadrian.
Thanks for joining us again today. And this is the first time we are recording where I can say, please do us a favor and give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us.
You can subscribe on Spotify. That helps boost we show up on the search results a lot better that way.
Yeah, but it was exciting in the past 2 weeks since the last episode. All of those other podcast networks have come through. And I mean, Jadrian, you and I kind of started this and figured out, we'll figure out how it all works. And big shout out. I gave a shout out on LinkedIn, but Julia Adams, the senior at Susquehanna, really did a nice job kind of navigating all of the nuances to get us listed. So that was pretty cool. Publishing and editing major at SU and business double major. So pretty cool.
This is always the thing. I think we actually talked about this. Maybe in our first episode, we talked about this of comparative advantage and opportunity cost. Matt and I have talked about doing this for a very long time. And it's just him and I just feel so busy all the time where we just kept putting it off. And we're so thankful that there's somebody who did it much faster than if either one of us bozos tried to do it.
Absolutely.
It would take us forever.
Would have taken us forever, and it saved us time too. Yes. A lot of time. So that was really cool. And as of this moment, who knows? Maybe someday this will be huge and it'll be monetized. But we're not paid for this. The biggest value we would get is if you're willing to share it and you're willing to give us a review. So if you're willing to do that,
we love comments. We love comments. If I ever get a comment, I am so excited. I see it in my inbox. I was like, somebody left a comment.
It's cool. I like comments, and they're always nicer on this one than they are on my YouTube channel. Sometimes I get plenty of nice ones there too, but then every now and then I'll get some ones that are not quite as nice. But that's
any mean ones on your Disney video?
No, everybody loves Disney. So
okay.
No, that people like that. Thanks for sharing that one as well.
So Matt, what are you drinking today? I have one I'm very excited to share with you.
I actually have one I'm excited to share with you as well. It's from the world's oldest brewery.
Ooh.
And even better, I had in Freising in Germany, right outside Munich. I stopped here. I gave a talk. Should have been, a decade ago, almost to the day. It was April 2013. It's kind of crazy. And, I had a hotel that I stayed at, and the talk was at about 1:30 or so in the afternoon or 2 in the afternoon. And of course, beforehand, they bring me to that place and they all get a beer.
Mm-hmm.
That's the normal lunchtime routine in Germany. And so I had to commemorate and buy the mug from the brewery as well.
The first time I went to Germany, I should say the first time. I've only been once. But the first time I went, I had heard about beer gardens, but I didn't actually I know about American beer gardens that are replicating Germany. And I went to an actual beer garden. That was just such a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
I had a real light radler, just, drink a lemonade beer, super nice. I spoke no German, so I foolishly did not order food correctly, stood in line, thought I was ordering the right thing. And it was, so that they had the whole menu in German, and I'm like, crap. And we picked one. I just went with, I go, Kassewurst, please. I just picked one. I was like, that sounds good. Those of you who are German speakers know what I ordered. Those of you who are not German speakers, I ordered blocks of cheese is what I ordered.
Really? Okay.
Also, I thought it was going to be a cheese sausage. No, It was just chunks of Swiss cheese. Yeah, it was just big chunks of cheese. And it was hot. It was not the right
That was not the right thing.
No.
I realized that I was showing the beer for those watching, but if you're listening, and we just thank those for listening, this is going to be butchering. Weihenstephaner?
W's or V's, right? So it's
Weihenstephaner.
Somebody
can comment with the phonetics on Apple or on ours, and this will be the chance to call me an idiot for not knowing something, and I'll take it.
We already called each other bozo, or I called you a bozo already. So mine is coming back from the Star Hill Brewery, which is turning into my favorite brewery. I think this is either the third or the fourth Star Hill Brewery that I've had from. I think I pronounced it wrong last time too, so I think it's Crozet or Crozet, Virginia. But I had a couple of these before, and I'll tell you the reason I remember it was the cranberry sour that I really, really liked out of it. So they had a new to me 4-pack. So I got the Ramble On Juicy IPA.
Ooh.
Focus. I am drinking an IPA. I don't love IPAs, but I really like juicy IPAs. Really like those. And since I've shared my glasses with you before, I made sure to get a good glass. I'm going to share this because this was a very special gift to me from one of my favorites. I'm going to say one of my favorites, but she actually is my favorite student who went on to get a PhD. So she got me this glass. It's a little tough to see, but it is a grid. It's an outline mapped grid of the city of Houston.
Oh, very
so
cool.
I'm not from Houston. Like I consider Houston my home. So it's got like the coordinates on the side. So Marissa, she's a grad student at West Virginia University, gave me this as a gift, as a graduation gift. And it was a really when I get those thoughtful sort of gifts, right, that like tie in things that like, I appreciate all gifts that I give. So it's going to make me sound really bad when I'm like, I hate those generic gifts. I appreciate all gifts, but there's something special about like, right, like they pick something they know you.
Yeah, that's a thoughtful gift.
It's a thoughtful gift, and it's always
beer,
really nice.
Something for beer that has Houston in it is pretty thoughtful. So.
Yeah, you give me a Texas thing, and that's plenty for me. It's
trivia the other day. They asked where the breweries were located, and I had no problem answering Shiner Bock, in part from our conversations. I might have gotten it anyway, but I was not. I would have been kicked off the podcast if I got it wrong.
What was the question? I'm kind of curious.
Oh, it was a round of 10, and they asked, we'll name the brewery, and we'll give you a few options. What state is it from?
Oh, that's easy. Okay, that's not so bad. Yeah.
We got 10 out of 10. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we might have gotten 8 or 9 without the multiple options.
Yeah.
But
okay, yeah. So the Shiner one's a good. So the nice part too about Shiner, so I'll give you a little bit of extra trivia if you ever need extra for another one. Shiner beer is made in Shiner. So this is actually, I will say this is a little tough. Shiner is actually not the brewery name. It's the Spätzle Brewery, which makes Shiner Bock. They are located in Shiner, Texas. So it's actually really easy to remember where they're from.
I could remember that one.
Yeah, so it's really easy to remember. Shiner beer, Shiner, Texas. Ooh, this is look at that. That is hazy.
It's a rare day when you have the IPA and I don't.
Oh, so. This is gonna be good. Yeah, so this will be a nice transition. Speaking of Texas, my Houston Texans have the number 2 draft pick in the NFL draft coming up. So Matt and I are talking about the NFL draft. The Texans have had some top draft picks for the past 20 years.
They have had some good picks, and they
pick at the top for the past 20 years.
They've had a lot of good picks. We want to talk a little bit about the NFL draft and the economics and the economic concepts you can find within. Honestly, I think we could talk about this for 3 hours on the economics. So we're just going to pick a couple, and who knows, maybe we'll do another one next year on this. But one thing that's interesting is the Texans going into the last week of the season were slated for the number 1 pick in the draft. Their head coach was looking to be on their way to be fired. And so all of a sudden, they come out of nowhere and put on this incredible performance, and they win the last game, and they no longer have that number 1 draft pick, which I know there was one area you had commented that you wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. And it's the Texans kind of like all their fans are like, what are you doing? But
or even the fans wanted it, right? Like, idiots.
But the players on the team, of course, they want to win. Their season's been terrible, but many will be free agents, and they want to keep a job. They want to put some good film on tape and have people remember them for working hard. And the head coach, if they're sticking around, maybe they would, in the back of their mind, want to lose. But if they don't think they're sticking around, I believe it was Lovie Smith. He wants to win. But the GM and the owner and the fans, they all want the team to lose. So it's an interesting dynamic here.
So we should probably say, so we're recording this, kind of planning to release this right before the NFL draft. So we are kind of we're going to talk about football in this section. There are other leagues that have other drafts very similar. So in the United States, it's the U.S. leagues do it. Internationally, this is not necessarily an international thing. The NFL's, I think, I don't want to say it's unique, but actually I have some draft history that has some economics in it that I think you'll like too. So the NFL draft, those of you who are not kind of familiar with the differences, the NFL draft, the worst team in the league drafts for generally, unless there's like trades and all sorts of stuff, but generally the worst team drafts first, and then they draft in order, and then the best team of the previous year drafts last. That's the general process. You can trade those picks around. You can trade future picks. Like you can trade stuff. That's actually, so I think Major League Baseball is very similar in that sense. There's some extra picks that teams get. The NBA is very different. They operate a lottery system, and the worse you are, the better your chance. They used to have like I don't know if they still do the lottery balls or not.
I think it's lottery balls, although I don't think they show that part to the
Yeah, they used to show the lottery balls, so they would put all these balls in a pit and they would pull out a team. So if you were the worst team, you had a better chance of drafting first, but there was not a guarantee that you would draft first. So part of the reason we're talking about the NFL is it's really nice and easy to talk about because generally the worst team, which was the Carolina Panthers last year, the worst team drafts first and then it progressively gets better, or the better teams draft later. So Matt, what is an economics concept that you like about the draft? And then I'll share a history economic concept.
So I think there's a lot of fun stuff. I'll go first with what's the value of any drafting in any particular spot in the draft, and where does it seem like there's perhaps, well, economists have noted perhaps a mismatch in value, including Nobel Prize winning economist Richard Thaler co-wrote a paper called Overconfidence versus Market Efficiency in the National Football League. This is now running on 15 plus years old, but looking at what is the value of a particular pick. So the first overall draft pick, you get the first pick of anybody in the draft. Every single player, you get the absolute first shot. The problem, though, is you also have to pay that player a lot more.
A lot of money. A lot.
And now there's restrictions. Back in 2005, actually, everybody negotiated, so the salaries would have been quite a bit higher. Now they're actually capped, and the first overall pick gets a certain amount, the second overall pick gets a certain amount, and so on. That's quite a bit less than the market value if they had negotiated. But the first overall pick seems to be overvalued by teams. And what was found, what some economists found, is just looking at performance of the players versus how much you pay them, is that there really wasn't that great of a difference in terms of the value between, say, the first overall and the 20th overall and the 30th or the 40th, when you think about the player you're getting and the amount that you're paying the particular player. So I think that's one kind of fascinating aspect. That said, the team with the first overall draft pick can trade down, as it said, and get a whole lot more draft picks.
That's almost always, that's the recommendation almost always, right? Is that like you shouldn't draft first, like you don't do it.
Yeah,
like trade that for something. It's better to get, I think, like you said, right? It's better to, if you could trade your first pick away for like a third and a fourth round pick, those are just as valuable, productive wise, and they're going to be way cheaper. And right, I almost think about it in like an investment strategy. It's almost like you're spreading out your risk of who you're going to get, right? Because if you put all your money and all your stuff in one number one pick, what if you get a Ryan Leaf as your draft pick?
We could name a lot of top 5 picks that haven't panned out. And the Bears just traded to the Panthers, and the Panthers gave up the 7th overall pick, first next year, another second, another third, and a Pro Bowl-ish caliber wide receiver. I mean, a lot of capital basically to move up 6 picks. And so the idea of these draft picks are lottery tickets, right? The title of the paper is Overconfidence versus Market Efficiency. That given you can't be as confident, it might be, like, as you say, better to have, would you rather have one first or a second, a third, and a fourth, where you have 3 shots at perhaps getting players in all a little bit cheaper?
So I have a question for you then. I believe I think it's Massey and Thaler. I believe them that it's overvalued. There's a market inefficiency type stuff. So I think back to like the Moneyball story, right? The Oakland A's were able to do something special that nobody else did. But after enough time, other teams figured it out too. And so I'm really curious, why do you think it is? So I would say there's a market design issue as well, but like I'm kind of curious, like your thoughts. Why would any team want to draft first? Or is it really just like, is it exuberance? Like, no, we're not going to be inefficient. All those other losers were. Why do we why do teams keep doing it? Like, why don't they just trade it away instead?
I think 3 things come to mind. First, the number of picks people seem to be getting for trading down has dropped a little. So I think teams are catching on a bit. Second thing, with the advent of the salary cap or the fixed salary restrictions, which came in. We could look this up and drop it in, but I know in 2007, for example, when the Vikings drafted Adrian Peterson, they still had to negotiate this big contract. I think actually Sam Bradford might have been the last quarterback who was able to negotiate and get this massive, huge deal. And then the next QB, it was much lower. So that's, I think that changes things a little bit because you're not paying quite as much for those top overall picks as you would otherwise. The third, and the reason I think the Panthers could have been perfectly valid in making this trade is a top quarterback is worth so much in the NFL.
But that's their paper, is that the top quarterbacks are not necessarily like once you take all the quarterbacks in all the positions, they're not that much better than the quarterbacks that are taken in the second round.
I think
that's what their paper was about.
If you look at who's in the NFL right now, right? I mean, so many of the quarterbacks are first round draft picks. It's really it's tough to find a good QB outside of the first round. It can happen, but it's a lot rarer.
Okay. But the quarterbacks, so that's a survivor bias problem, right? Like the ones who are still here are number one picks, but all of the number one picks are not still here, right? Like you got like two sides of it, right? So if you right, how far back you want to go? 5 years? So 20 is 20. Is 5 years
you can miss
time?
on QBs in the first round.
No, but, so I think that's right. Is that what it is? Right? Is it just a gamble of the first rounders of like, I don't know, right? So like Sam Darnold is up here. He was the third pick. Baker Mayfield was the number one pick. Quarterback. Josh Allen. He's still good.
Yeah.
Josh Rosen. That is it for the
so
Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was the very last pick.
So there were 5. I mean, that was exceptionally good. But
I got lucky.
But imagine you're in that and you say, if you're an NFL team, if you say to Carolina, look, this is what you got to trade, but here's what it is. 40% of the time, you are going to get an absolute all-pro caliber QB, a quarterback that is so good that they could be your team. When that person's on the field, you will be a contender for 15 years, as long as you're not an idiots like Baltimore and not giving them a contract or whatever.
Well, let me take you 1 year back. The number 2 overall pick, Chicago quarterback,
Mitchell
Trubisky.
But what was the number 10 and the number 11? Wasn't that Patrick Mahomes?
Number 10 is Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, you're right. Then, let me go down to number 12, Deshaun Watson, who
has had off the field issues, but
well, he had some on the field issues too.
Well, I mean, boy, he got a massive contract for his play. So that's right.
Is it a gamble, right? You're like, we're willing to take a franchise pick. I don't know. My market design answer was somebody has to draft first, right? Like they can't all trade away the first pick. So somebody has to draft first. And I guess I actually got to this list by trying to find your answer of like, how have the salaries for the first round picks changed? So that was my goal, was I was trying to figure that out while you were talking about it. It's interesting, right? I think this is always when they used to, I say they used to, right? They're doing it now. When they do the drafts in person and you would see the fans just booing. I think it was the Jets, right? Are they the ones that are famous for just booing everything?
Jets are famous. The Eagles booed Donovan McNabb like crazy way back when.
Okay. Well, I think this is actually a perfect transition into my history story that I think you'll appreciate this as both an economics and a history person. I got a little trivia for you. So I'm going to ask you a trivia question. Since those of you who don't know, Matt loves trivia. And I don't know if he loves trivia or bars or barroom trivia, but like it's
fun.
It's trivia, but it's even better when it's at a bar.
That's very true.
Matt, do you know the very first draft pick of the NFL when it was started? The first ever draft
when
pick.
The NFL became the NFL anytime, or the NFL?
So 1936 was the very first NFL draft.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea who it is. I'm guessing it'll be a name I know.
You might not. No.
Okay.
This is actually the fun history part. Do you know anything about the person, like where they played college, I will tell you, they were a Heisman winner. So they were the Heisman winner.
First overall draft pick in 36. No, I couldn't have told you it was 36. I don't know.
I have an amazing story for you then, because
Okay.
you will absolutely love it. It's like a beautiful story of economics and sports and everything together. The very first player ever drafted in the NFL never saw a single field, never played. He was the Heisman winner the year before. His name is Jay Berwinger.
Okay.
He played at the University of Chicago. So back then, the University of Chicago was like a Big Ten school. Like they were multiple national championship type teams back in the like 10s, 20s, 30s. So he played at the University of Chicago. He got drafted by the Chicago Bears. So like he was a hometown draft. Like back then you drafted nearby. So he was first ever player drafted. He turned it down because it didn't pay enough money. His degree from the University of Chicago paid more than being a professional football player. So he was a Heisman winning football player, got drafted in the first ever NFL draft, never played because of a salary dispute. They wouldn't pay him enough money.
That's we are in a different world right now.
Yeah, right. So this is what's so great about it. I'm reading through it. So the Philadelphia Eagles selected him. They couldn't go to it. Then the Bears picked him. But yeah, so he didn't play. I'm trying to see if I can find it. He was requesting. Yeah, here it is. He requested $15,000 for the year. The Bears owners, George Hollis, only offered $13,500. So instead, he took a job with the Chicago Rubber Company and became a part-time coach at the University of Chicago. He later regretted his decision.
He said he never regretted. That's what
he later regretted it.
He later regretted. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of fascinating. The money has changed in football. Whereas the first overall draft pick is instantly a multimillionaire.
Mm-hmm.
And even, if you're drafted in the first round, it's still pretty significant money every year, even if you're the last pick of the first round. So I did not know that.
Yeah, I teach that story in my principal's class to talk about opportunity cost. So it's the very first opening story about when we start getting into player pay, marginal revenue, product stuff. I talk about that and I say, look, these players, a lot of them have other opportunities. Some of them are multiple sports. So it's fun to also talk about like the multi-sport athletes who have to pick which one they want to do.
Sure.
People who have college degrees. There was a famous, I remember how a couple of years ago, there was a famous player from Florida State. I think he delayed the draft because he got, I want to say like a Fulbright or a Rhodes Scholar. He got like some super massive national award type thing. But then there's also the Pat Tillman example of like
leaving the NFL to go to the military.
Yeah.
Chris Winkie was at Florida. He got the offer from Florida State, and then he took the pro baseball contract and money. When baseball didn't work out, he was welcomed back and ended up winning a title for them. That was kind of interesting. He was from the Twin Cities, so that's a name I know a little more. And actually, he went to the same high school that my nephew goes to and plays hockey at. So Cretin Durham Hall.
Well, so I'm hopeful. I feel like you might not get the question of Jay Berwinger. Okay. I feel like that's a very specific name.
That one, I was never getting that one.
But you might get a question of like, which team did he play for? So I hope that you can remember the University of Chicago. I think that'll be an easy
yeah. That's really cool. I would not have thought that the Chicago was a powerhouse. So
they were,
Yeah. So I know that when we talked a little bit before, you thought about the incentives and how they could be misaligned within.
Yes. So let me go back to your first story about the Texans. One of the things that is really interesting about the draft, and I think the draft, like largely, and you'll hear this in other places. So we're recording this now as there are rumors and rumbling of misdeeds in the NBA. So one of the problems is, like Matt was saying, you have the opportunity possibly to get a team-changing, culture-changing player at number one. And so if you think about kind of the way that the process works with the draft, it's the worst team at the end of the season is the one that's getting to draft. But if you're the worst team a couple games before the end of the season, you're not going to the playoffs. You're at the bottom. And so one of the problems is it creates an incentive for teams to tank. And so tanking is a huge concern for leagues. Like they act like that's not what they want. That's bad for TV. That's bad for the fans. So I'll say it's bad for the fans, except our conversation earlier where, if you're the coach, you want the pick for next year. But if you're the coach that thinks you're going to get fired, you don't care. As fans, I want to draft number 1, not number 2. As owners, you might want them to draft number 2. So the big, I'll say, brouhaha is at least in the NBA. I'm curious if next week or a week or two, if we find out more. But apparently, the big controversy is the Dallas Mavs sat some of their players not to play and trying to move up in the order and stuff. Matt, so that would be an example of misaligned. So I guess you can go 2 ways, right? Misaligned incentives or unintended consequences. You set up rules and people try to get around it. Matt, do you think that's a big deal? Like, is it something that we should even care about when it comes to sports?
A little bit. I would think it's bigger in the NBA because 5 players, 5 on a court at once. Game-changing quarterback.
But here's the thing: in the NBA, you're not guaranteed a pick. In the NBA, you're just it's a probability.
Yep.
So that's why I never understood it in the NBA. What's the point? Like, I don't see the benefit of tanking to get like a little bit higher of a probability.
Just slightly higher. Yeah. I mean, they started that with Patrick Ewing, I remember, in '85 draft.
Like, I sort of at least get it in the NFL because like you can like guarantee to move into that spot.
Yeah. I think it's tough. I think if anybody intentionally started to talk about how they're doing that, it would come out instantly. And I've never heard of that happening. The big reason is the coaches want to put good tape on. Okay, their team is doing terrible, but the coach might get fired. There's a good chance they'll get fired. But if they're getting fired, they really do not want their team to have quit on them. So they have an incentive for the team to keep fighting. And all of those players, right? I mean, players don't care who's coming in. I mean, maybe a little bit. I mean, all the players want to win, but whether it's the 1 pick or the 3 pick, do you think they really care? No, they want to have a good game. They practice all year. And for those who did sports, I did sports for a while growing up, right? Practices aren't fun. You practice and you work hard because the game days are fun.
So I'll give you an alternative. I'm going to give you this. So what is your college team? Is it?
It's kind of weird. It's probably
it's not
Iowa State is probably. So I went to University of South Dakota, and they are D1, but they're D1. They weren't before.
It sucks that they lost in that national championship game to a much better team that year.
Oh, harsh. Was that
we got so lucky? We got so lucky.
Was that USD or was that SDSU?
No, it was. We played the Jackrabbits.
That's SDSU.
Oh, you went to USD. Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's offensive, right? No. I'm not supposed to get those mixed up.
Well, I mean, if you went to South Dakota, it's like a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Not like the Jackrabbits.
What is South Dakota?
The Coyotes.
Oh.
So it's a little bit of a smaller school. Jackrabbits. The SDSU's had better.
Yeah.
They're a little bigger and they've had better sports.
But what's weird? I don't mix up North Dakota State and North Dakota. Like I know that those are 2 different places. I don't know why I missed. Are they? Yeah, they're red and black. Your team.
Yep, red.
And then South Dakota State is blue and yellow.
Blue and yellow.
Yeah. So you would say Iowa State? Is that
Iowa State? If USD's in something, and their women's team made the Sweet 16 last year in 2022, and that was awesome.
So
seeing them on ESPN and all that. But
I'm going to present an alternative that is very similar to the story, but I'm going to say it's very different, and I don't think it gets frowned upon. I saw this sort of behavior in a coaching ranks previously from teams that I watched, and I was never a fan of when it happened. So if you're watching a team, so say you're watching the Iowa State team, they start off the season, they're not looking good, right? They're starting. Let's say they go 0-4, right? Or like even in the Big 12, they're the Big 12.
Yep.
Right, they're starting the Big 12. They lose a couple games. Like they're not winning the Big 12. They're not going to a bowl game, right? Like if you know that 6 games in, right? They're 0-6.
Sure.
They're not going to finish it. They're not going to win a bowl game. They're not going to go to a bowl game. What happens often is the coaches will put in the next level of players. They'll say, look, this isn't our year.
Yeah.
Let's play the sophomores and juniors. Let's get them some playing time. Let's get them some experience.
Yep.
When realistically, they are likely not the best. Like what you're kind of saying. They're not the best players. They're not tanking. But they're also saying, like, we're not going to try to win out the rest of the season with our best players. We're preparing for next year.
Yep.
That's okay, though. I don't think, I don't like it. So I'll say I don't like it as a sports fan because, I want to see the best play. Like, I want to see the seniors play.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's okay.
It's an interesting point, right? There's a reason. There's good rationale for doing that in the NFL as well. Like, if you're seeing where are you and
See, it's the last game. See what the backup quarterback looks like.
You see a spark. So no, I understand that. My favorite sport's the NFL. My second favorite sport has now become the Premier League in the UK in soccer, and the whole relegation system there is absolutely fascinating, and it makes then following, of course, the bottom. And this year it's pretty close. Like the bottom 7 teams are all at risk. I think it's about 7, and so those games are really exciting. Yeah. It's exciting to see how number 18 versus number 16, because 18, 19, 20 are getting demoted to the lower league at the end of the year. I think that's really fun. And the system's not set up to do that, but it would be pretty interesting if, I remember the Vikings had one year where they were 3-13 and they got the number 3 overall pick. So they, if it's the bottom 3, right, they would have been demoted into the CFL or what, even how you set it up.
I dream about this all the time with college football. Like I already have like the partnerships in my head. So those of you who aren't familiar, college football in the United States has an FBS and an FCS. They're all Division I, but they kind of break it in half roughly. Of just like, usually what I say is, if it's a university that you've seen on TV, they're probably FBS. If you have not seen it on TV, or if it's just like a weird week, they're probably FCS. In my mind, it wouldn't work, and I get it, and I recognize that they would never happen. But a dream for me would be like a big conference is paired with a smaller conference. So like the Big Ten is paired with like the Pioneer League, and Villanova wins their league, and goodbye Rutgers. You switch, and you just switch one.
Yeah. That'd be fascinating. That'd be really interesting, right?
Right. So Penn State has to go to Villanova and play like their little 10,000 seat stadium.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, but it would be a lot of fun.
But man, I feel like I would love that. And then you could do you could have those sorts of pairings for both like basketball and football. Right, like the Villanova gets to move up and play in a bigger division for basketball. I don't know. I think it'd be fun. I dream about it all the time. I think about these like little geographic places, like the Southeastern Conference gets paired with like the Big South. So Kennesaw State wins and they replace Vanderbilt. It's just fun to imagine.
It would be. That would be funny. That'd be funny. We've gotten way off on incentives on the draft.
So we hit 3 topics though. So I think we did. I
think we've done a good job. So do you have a pop culture for the week?
Well, man, I don't want to give Abdullah and Darshik too much, so I feel like I got to pick something else. Okay, so actually, I'll say yes. I'll give you a pop culture. It's not draft related, but it is NFL related, pop culture related, and econ related. So, have you ever seen the Big Bang Theory spinoff, Young Sheldon?
I've seen the ads. And I might have seen one episode or something. But
awesome. So right. Basically, it's the Big Bang Theory, super popular, physicists, all that sort of stuff. Young Sheldon is the spinoff. It goes back in time to Sheldon as a small child, growing up in East Texas, and so it's like the life of a small kid who's Sheldon,
and based in Texas.
So I really like it. There's a very good scene where the family is all sitting around the TV. So it's everybody. It's Sheldon, his sister, his older brother, his dad, his mom. They're watching an NFL game. And so you're seeing the family and like from the TV's perspective. And basically I think like the announcers come on, they're like, it's fourth and 3. And his whole family's like, you got to punt. It's time to punt. You got to punt. And then Sheldon sits there and goes, but why? No, why? You don't need to do that. Statistically, you should be going for it on 4th down. And like he explains I think it's Romer, right? It's card.
Yeah. I believe it was Romer. I think you're right.
Yeah, he explains the Romer paper.
Yeah.
It basically says like, no, you've got to go for it. Like statistically, it doesn't make sense for you to punt when you've done so well on the other ones. So he explains sort of that NFL going for it on 4th down. So not draft related. But it is sort of fun just because it's a little different and it's cheesy, but I'll post that one in our Substack.
Yeah, I believe. I mean, I'm trying to. I just tried to look it up and I couldn't find it right away. But I believe it was something like it's 4th and 4. What would the Bellman equation say you should do? I believe it was by.
It is David Romer. I looked it up. Yeah.
Yep. And no, that's good. I don't have a sports one. I do have a current one. I've been watching the final season of Succession, and there's just an interesting line in there that I'm actually probably going to do a whole video on. But Connor, have you watched Succession at all?
No.
Okay. It's amazing. All the people aren't likable. So you got to give it about 3 episodes into season 1, but then we got hooked. But Connor's is talking about, are there some people complaining about rich people talking to somebody else? He goes, but they sure like the food. And he goes, nobody complained about Scrooge's wealth creation, and he really made society a lot better. And, the other person basically said yes, but it's the idea of Ebenezer Scrooge and how economists often will think very differently about him than the public.
Yes.
And the idea, right? This is somebody who lived a very poor life and made a lot of money, which means, of course, he produced a lot, but he wasn't consuming a lot. So other people got to enjoy the fruits of consumption. But he's really hated among, a lot of, society, right? Don't be a Scrooge is kind of, that's a phrase referring to Ebenezer Scrooge.
I fixed it.
Son. But there's a lot of truth to the idea that because he wasn't consuming, he was reinvesting in companies, he was leaving it behind for others, and other people got to consume more because he consumed less. So I just thought that was a fascinating line. You don't hear people in TV referring in any sort of positive way to Ebenezer Scrooge.
So when is the economics of succession?
Secession, yeah.
When is that coming out? When's
well, I've been doing a YouTube video every Friday, and I'm working with somebody on a paper for it, so I might submit it to one of the journals that you're an editor on. So there's a ton of lessons on it. So I've kind of got the lessons collected. So the writing of the paper is actually the easy part now.
Yeah, no, those are the sorts of things that I think they make everything better. If I can use one more thing that connects with one more person, those things are great. So those of you who wondered about Matt's random aside in the middle of his story, I can share with you that we are recording at a different time than Matt and I usually record at. And the sun is much lower in the sky than it usually is. And I stand in front of a window. And so we progress. If you watch the YouTube video version of this, you can see the sun progressively get brighter until I realize that I can just put my big fat head in front of it and it won't do that. So it took me, what are we at? Like 38 minutes or so, probably 40 minutes.
I didn't realize it got much worse at the very end. I don't know if it just dropped down far enough in the sky.
It's just enough to be annoying. So I did just fix that.
An incentive to check out the YouTube.
I just need to be taller, right? If I was a little taller, it wouldn't be such a problem.
Just work on that. Yeah. Well, that was a good conversation. For a non-IPA, this was delicious, as evidenced by my empty glass.
I'm close. Most of it's just it's incredibly juicy. So like it fits the bill. Awesome. I really like this one. So I'll be checking it in very highly. Matt and I do have some fun things coming up in future episodes. So we have already started to slowly plan out our future episodes. So we're very excited for one coming up soon. But as always, if you have topic ideas, things you want us to talk about, things you want to hear, leave us a comment, email us. We're happy to talk to you however, whatever suits your preference.
Absolutely.
But then also share and like and subscribe and do all those sorts of cool things. Share it with people so that other people can laugh along with us being idiots for a little bit.
I appreciate everybody's support, and thank you. And Adrian, until the next time.
Cheers, Matt.